Have you ever wondered why so many couples seem perfect in the beginning, but drift apart over time? What most people don't reveal is that the majority of couples aren't truly compatible. Compatibility goes far beyond looks or the chemistry of a first date. It's about values, expectations, and the ability to grow together. In this video, we're diving into what really makes a relationship last and why so many couples end up realizing, often too late, that they weren't meant to be. Get ready for a counterintuitive revelation. Love at first sight might be an emotional trap that hides the real differences. And what if I told you there's a secret no one talks about as to why so many couples aren't a good match? Stick around and you'll not only find out why, but also how to avoid these traps and build something solid and real. Relationships are like a garden. They need constant care to bloom, but they're also deeply affected by the changing seasons of life. As people grow, their priorities, perspectives, and even their emotional needs can naturally shift. This personal growth is an individual journey, but it deeply affects the dynamics of a couple. One of the secrets no one shares is that while some couples manage to grow together, others realize their paths are drifting apart. Couples who aren't truly compatible often just haven't evolved in the same direction. Significant personal growth can profoundly change how a couple interacts. That hobby that once brought you together may no longer hold the same value, or the mindset that once complemented each other might now create barriers. Many couples aren't made for each other because, over time, they discover their core values have changed. This doesn't mean the relationship was a mistake, but rather that it reflected a different phase of life for each person. The illusion of initial compatibility can blind partners to these changes. A practical example of this is seen in couples where one partner decides to invest in personal growth by going to therapy, reading books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, or practicing meditation. The partner who embarks on this journey begins to develop a new worldview, more focused on the present, while the other may remain stuck in old patterns. What many couples don't realize is that this difference can create an emotional chasm. Do you really fit together, or are you just at different stages of growth? This idea brings us to an essential point: the love and connection that laid the foundation for your relationship can survive these changes, but only with a lot of communication and adaptation. The secret is staying aware that each partner's personal growth can enrich the relationship if both are willing to evolve together, rather than growing apart. And that makes us reflect on the foundation of that initial connection, which brings us to our next topic. The concept of love at first sight has always fascinated people. Some believe that this instant connection is the ultimate sign that two people are meant to be together. However, the reality might be more complex than that. While some couples do experience an immediate and lasting bond, others, who start out the same way, end up drifting apart over time. The secret no one talks about is that love and connection are not static. They need continuous nurturing to withstand life's inevitable changes. In many cases, that initial connection is fueled by a combination of physical attraction and emotional chemistry, which can create the illusion of compatibility. But do you really match? As time passes, challenges and responsibilities arise, and that's when many couples discover that the bond that once seemed unbreakable begins to weaken. This happens because true compatibility goes far beyond initial attraction. It involves shared values, common interests, and, most importantly, the ability to grow together. A practical example of this is couples who, in the beginning, share superficial interests like movies and music, but over time, realize their ambitions and life dreams head in opposite directions. While one desires stability and a calm life, the other might be seeking constant adventure and change. This disconnect often leads to the question, were we really meant for each other? What many couples don't realize is that this question doesn't just emerge over time but stems from a lack of alignment in the small details of daily life. So, the secret to keeping the flame alive lies in maintaining that initial connection through open communication and a willingness to adapt. It's essential to remember that the illusion of compatibility can easily appear, but true harmony is built on mutual effort. And speaking of mutual effort, that leads us to the next point: the role of communication in a relationship's success. Communication is, without a doubt, one of the most important pillars in any relationship. Without it, suppressed emotions, unexpressed needs, and misunderstandings begin to build barriers between partners. The secret many couples don't know is that effective communication goes far beyond just talking. It involves active listening, understanding each other's emotions, and expressing your own feelings clearly and honestly. Couples who aren't a good match often fail in this area, creating a growing disconnect. One of the biggest obstacles to good communication is the fear of being vulnerable. Many people struggle to share their needs out of fear of seeming weak or misunderstood. However, it's precisely this vulnerability that can strengthen the bond between a couple. When both partners can express their frustrations, desires, and fears openly, it's possible to work together to find solutions. Do you really fit together? One way to find out is by assessing how well communication flows in your relationship. For example, in a situation where one partner feels overwhelmed with work but doesn't clearly communicate this, the other might interpret the behavior as disinterest. The result? Resentment and emotional distance. The key here is to make room for sincere dialogue. What many couples don't realize is that by communicating their needs, they not only avoid misunderstandings but also create a deeper emotional connection. And by practicing empathetic listening, both partners can grow together. In this way, effective communication not only resolves conflicts but also helps reinforce the bonds that hold the couple together. And with that, we come to a question that could shape the future of relationships: the presence of artificial intelligence in the search for romantic compatibility. We live in an era where technology shapes nearly every aspect of our lives, and relationships are no exception. Artificial intelligence is increasingly present in the search for partners, with algorithms promising to find perfect matches based on preferences and behaviors. While this might sound promising, can these systems truly measure what makes couples genuinely compatible? The secret no one tells is that emotional compatibility goes far beyond data and statistics. AI can, indeed, help identify similar interests and values, but the real essence of a relationship lies in nuances that can't be easily quantified. Do you really fit together? Often, the answer to that question only reveals itself over time, through living together, overcoming challenges, and developing a genuine emotional connection. What many couples don't realize is that emotional compatibility is built, not simply found in an algorithm. A practical example of this is the rise of online dating platforms. They can facilitate connections but don't guarantee the longevity of a relationship. The process of getting to know someone goes far beyond what a preference analysis can predict. For instance, what an algorithm might consider a perfect match may prove unsustainable in real life, where communication and personal growth play key roles. The illusion of compatibility created by these systems can set unrealistic expectations. However, despite the limitations, AI can still be a useful tool for starting the process of meeting someone. The key is understanding that, regardless of how the relationship begins, its long-term success depends on how both partners commit to it. And that brings us to an important reflection: how relationships change over time and how the differences between partners can become more pronounced as the years go by. It's natural that, over time, relationships change. What seemed like perfect harmony in the beginning can turn into something completely different as people grow and change their priorities. Many couples aren't made for each other precisely because they can't cope with these transformations. The secret no one talks about is that, over the years, the differences between partners, which were once easily overlooked, become more evident and harder to ignore. These changes can happen in various ways. Sometimes the couple realizes that their interests, dreams, and values have taken opposite directions. Do you really fit together? A common example is when one partner begins to value stability more, while the other seeks new adventures. This imbalance is not uncommon and can create emotional distance. The illusion of initial compatibility starts to unravel as the real needs of each person come to light. What many couples don't realize is that these changes, while challenging, don't have to be the end of a relationship. Instead of resisting transformation, couples can learn to adapt and find new points of connection. This requires emotional maturity and a willingness to accept each other's personal growth, even if it means rethinking the dynamics of the relationship. Are we willing to grow together, or are we destined to grow apart? These reflections lead us to the conclusion that change is inevitable. However, there are practical tools and skills that can be developed to navigate these transformations and keep the relationship healthy. And it's precisely about these skills that we'll talk about in the next section. Many couples believe that love is enough to sustain a relationship, but the reality is that practical skills are needed to maintain a healthy and lasting relationship. What many couples don't realize is that conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and adaptability are just as important as initial attraction. Couples who aren't a good match often lack these tools, which can turn small disagreements into major rifts. For example, one crucial skill is the ability to resolve conflicts constructively. Instead of feeding resentment, couples should learn to argue productively, focusing on solutions rather than problems. Do you really fit together? True compatibility is revealed when partners can face challenges together, instead of drifting apart. Books like The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman can offer practical insights into how to build these skills. Additionally, emotional intelligence is a key component. Understanding and managing your own emotions, as well as your partner's, is essential to maintaining harmony. The secret no one talks about is that this skill can be developed, just like any other. What many couples don't realize is that without these tools, the relationship can become an emotional battlefield, where small misunderstandings quickly escalate into major conflicts. Therefore, it's essential that couples invest time and effort in learning and developing these practical skills. Through continuous learning, they can create a solid foundation to face the ups and downs of life together. Speaking of life together, daily routines can either be a blessing or a curse for relationships, which brings us to the next topic. Routine can be both the best friend and the worst enemy of a relationship. When couples fall into a repetitive cycle of behaviors and interactions, the emotional connection can suffer. The secret no one tells is that while routine offers a sense of security, it can also stifle the excitement and passion that keep the flame alive. Couples who aren't truly compatible tend to be more affected by monotony, as the lack of novelty brings out their differences. However, routine doesn't have to be an inevitable problem. Small adjustments can make all the difference. Do you really fit together? One way to find out is by evaluating how you handle the predictability of everyday life. Incorporating surprises or out-of-the-ordinary activities, such as planning a special dinner or an unexpected trip, can break the monotony. What many couples don't realize is that these simple gestures often rekindle the connection and keep the relationship healthy. A practical example of this would be a couple who, after years of being together, start feeling distant due to the daily grind of work, household chores, and responsibilities. Instead of accepting the distance, they can choose to break the cycle with a change of environment, whether it's a weekend getaway or a simple change in setting, like a different kind of date night at home, with games or movies they both enjoy. The illusion of compatibility can be countered by the power of innovation. Thus, understanding and acting on the impact of routine is vital for keeping the relationship alive. Small gestures and conscious changes can prevent a couple from getting stuck in a cycle of monotony. And speaking of change, cultural expectations surrounding marriage have also evolved over time, bringing a new perspective to modern relationships. Over the decades, the concept of marriage has undergone profound transformations, reflecting cultural and social changes. What was once seen as a moral and religious obligation is now often a choice based on emotional affinity and personal convenience. The secret no one tells is that as marriage expectations change, many couples realize they aren't meant for each other because their ideas of commitment diverge. Couples who don't fit tend to face more difficulties when these shifts in expectations come into play. These changes also include the rise of cohabitation and the decline of religious marriages, especially among younger generations. Do you really fit together? The question here is whether both partners have an aligned view of what marriage or commitment represents. For some, marriage still carries a traditional weight, while for others, it's simply another optional step. This difference in perspective can be a source of major tension in a relationship. A practical example of this can be seen in couples where one partner deeply values marriage as a rite of passage and eternal commitment, while the other views matrimony as a dispensable formality. The illusion of compatibility may hide this discrepancy in the early stages of a relationship, but as life together deepens, these differences can become insurmountable. What many couples don't realize is that these cultural changes also affect how they perceive their roles within the relationship. Therefore, it's crucial that couples discuss their expectations early on, understanding what commitment means to each of them. As times change, so do views on the role of marriage in a relationship. And speaking of life together, friendship within a relationship can be the deciding factor in sustaining it, especially when the initial passion begins to fade. Beyond love and passion, a solid relationship is built on a foundation of true friendship. The secret no one tells is that when the initial passion begins to cool, it's the friendship that keeps the couple united. Couples who truly fit together understand that emotional connection goes beyond physical attraction and recognize the importance of being good friends, sharing confidences, support, and mutual respect. Friendship within a relationship offers emotional security and creates a space where both partners can be their authentic selves without fear of judgment. Do you really fit together? The answer often lies in how you behave as friends. If you can laugh together, support each other through tough times, and celebrate small daily victories. These elements are crucial to sustaining a relationship in the long term. A practical example is a couple who, even after years of being together, still find joy in spending time together, even in simple activities like watching a movie or walking in the park. What many couples don't realize is that without this foundation of friendship, the relationship can become an emotional burden. And, speaking of different perspectives, it's interesting to note how previous generations viewed relationships, which brings us to the next point. Previous generations saw relationships as something based on duty and commitment, whereas today, many young people prioritize independence and emotional well-being. The secret no one tells is that this shift in mindset directly impacts how couples face challenges. Couples who don't fit together tend to get lost in generational differences, where one partner may have a more traditional view, while the other seeks freedom and individuality. This difference in perspective generates conflicts, especially when one partner expects sacrifices that the other isn't willing to make. Do you really fit together? The answer often depends on how you deal with these differences. If one partner values marriage in the old-fashioned way, with defined roles, and the other seeks a more egalitarian relationship, incompatibility can be hard to overcome. A practical example of this is couples where one partner was raised with a traditional view of marriage, while the other was influenced by more modern values of independence. What many couples don't realize is that these differences aren't insurmountable, as long as there is open dialogue and a willingness to understand the other's perspective. And, when it comes to understanding and opening up, vulnerability also plays a crucial role in the success of a relationship. Being vulnerable in a relationship is one of the keys to strengthening the emotional connection between partners. The secret no one tells is that the more open and honest we are about our fears and insecurities, the deeper the relationship becomes. Couples who don't fit together often struggle to fully open up, creating emotional barriers that prevent the relationship from growing. Vulnerability allows both partners to know each other on a deeper level, creating a foundation of mutual trust. Do you really fit together? The answer may lie in how comfortable you are sharing your most genuine emotions. When a couple avoids vulnerability out of fear of judgment or rejection, the connection weakens over time. A practical example of this is when one partner hesitates to express their true feelings for fear of appearing weak. What many couples don't realize is that the strength of a relationship lies in its ability to embrace vulnerability and use it as a tool for growth. After all, it's through emotional openness that couples find ways to overcome challenges together. After everything we've explored, it's clear that true compatibility goes far beyond appearances or initial passion. The question remains, are you willing to apply this knowledge and transform your relationship? Think carefully. Do you really fit together, or are you just living under the illusion of compatibility? The secret many couples don't realize is that with the right tools, it's possible to build something lasting, even in the face of differences. What are you waiting for to take action and make a difference? Remember, no relationship is perfect, but with commitment and dedication, it is possible to create a connection that goes beyond expectations. The key is to invest time in understanding each other's emotional needs and be willing to make adjustments along the way. What few couples realize is that small changes can have a big impact on the quality of the relationship, from honest conversations to moments of relaxation and fun. So, the final question is, are you ready to make a difference in your relationship? If you are willing to step out of your comfort zone and truly invest in growth as a couple, the path to true compatibility is ahead of you. Be sure to continue learning about what makes a relationship truly flourish. The journey to building a strong relationship doesn't happen overnight, but every step you take toward mutual understanding makes all the difference. When both partners are committed to adapting and evolving together, compatibility becomes a conscious construct rather than a coincidence. Take this opportunity to reflect on how small actions can strengthen your connection. Now, I want to know, what will you do to improve the connection in your relationship? Leave a comment down below with your response, and let's keep this conversation going. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do that now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos with more tips and reflections on relationships. See you in the next video.